Hailing from Fort Myers, Florida, Plies, born Algernon, Washington, made a splash entering the game in 2007 as Slip and Slide's flagship artist. Take some jive and some pop, mix it up in a pot, sprinkle a little Trick Daddy on top, and this is what you got. To put this all into perspective, we're going to be counting down Plies' body of work from his studio albums on Slip and Slide and Atlantic from worst to best. Primarily, Plies' catalog and his best material are actually on his mixtapes that we won't count for on this list, but we will include the street album, The Real Testament too. If you want to see that list though, leave a comment, but without further ado, here's the best of Plies. Number 5, The Realist. In 2008, Plies was one of the hottest rappers in the game. This was during the ringtone era of rap, a time when people would pay to have their songs like Plies and T-Pain Shouted or Hypnotized featuring Akon play when they got a call on their Nokias or Blackberries. Powered by the millions of sales those songs got from that, their performance on the radio and the charts, as well as the positive reception received from the streets from his first 2 albums, Plies decided to strike while the iron was hot. Only 6 months after dropping his second album, Plies put out his third offering, The Realist, in December of 2008. This is similar to what DMX did, but unlike The Dog, Plies' quick album follow-up comes out sounding half-baked. Songs like Me and My Goons, Fuck You Gonna Do About It, and Heard of Me have beats that sound like they were cooked up in 5 minutes, and the lyrics are uninspiring. Plus, the 2 lead singles, Wanted, Needed featuring Ashanti and Put It On You featuring Chris J, are R&B thug records only good for their choruses. However, there are some absolute jams on here. Plenty Money, the theme song for anyone who just got a fat check, will forever be a hustler's anthem. What's in my pocket, dawg? Family Straight is a glimpse of Plies at his most vulnerable as he prays to God to help his family overcome the struggle. On All Black, a track with a menacing minimal beat, Plies whispers murderous threats that make you feel like you're the one about to mask up. Sean Gary lends a hand on the very classy and slick song for the ladies, Streetlight, and Manny Fresh makes a banging beat for Pants Hang Low, a protest song inspired by unjust laws in the South, criminalizing the black fashion trend of sagging. If Plies took a little more time to cook up this LP, we'd have a more substantial addition to his catalog, but there are a few hints of greatness on here. Number 4, The Real Testament 2. A lot changed for Plies between the years of his heyday and 2020. He went from being one of the most notable Southern rappers to an artist more content staying low-key and dropping singles and mixtapes for his die-hard fan base. The Real Testament 2, released during the beginning of the pandemic, was intended to be a sequel to his much-cherished debut. On this album, not only is Plies' changed status in the rap game noted, but also his new artistic tendencies as well, for better and for worse. Gone are the big-budget producers that used to provide his soundscape. TNT XD and Dreek Beats do most of that now. Also, there are no more syrupy, radio-friendly R&B records with chart-topping singers, just YK Osiris on Don't Ask, which is low-key a bop. Both of these changes are fine because Plies generally picks the best beats from any producer he's working with, and the tracks where he specifically targets the mainstream are some of his weakest in his collection. But the most notable change to Plies' music is the most important instrument a rapper has. That's his voice. No longer tapping into the raspy, brash, pseudo yell that made his earlier music so bold, he now uses a calmer, more subdued tone with various inflections that make him oscillate between whisper and whine. Despite this, there is still a lot of tracks on here to like, such as Hot Wire and Yeah Yeah, where Plies still shows us he can stunt well on a track. One of the things Plies does best is introspection on wax, and there's a lot of that on here than any other LP. Just Keep It Real, Everybody Ain't Your Friend, Don't Fold, Bread, and Right or Wrong are all the tracks where Plies wears his heart on his sleeve and it resonates. The album is better than The Realist, but not as good as the next one on our list. While it does pack a lot of substance, it lacks in style and the uniqueness of Plies' artistry. Now, before we get to the top 3 albums from Fort Myers' finest, we have to touch on that mixtape run. A few years prior to his debut album releasing, Plies made a name for himself in the streets with a string of fire mixtapes. Projects like 36 Ounces, 100% Real Nigga, and Bottom to the Top had his buzz on 10. With a mixtape catalog well in the double digits, Plies has a few sleeper bangers like Ran Off on the Plug Twice and Drip for Sale that still have him putting out Lucy records to this day. Let us know in the comments which is your favorite Plies mixtape. Okay, now back to the list. Number 3, Goon Affiliated. The 4th LP during Plies' 3-year run from 2007 to 2010 as one of the top rappers from the South is also his last major release. Since then, he's mostly been releasing mixtapes for his die-hard fans and going viral from time to time with his takes on social media. But this 2010 album shows Plies tapping back back into his edgy, gritty topics and themes that got him the ear of the streets at the beginning of his career, and some of the tongue-in-cheek silliness he's known for currently on Instagram. For the clubs, Plies has some up-tempo slappers on here like Go Live, Bruh Bruh, and Flaw. For the trenches, there's a lot of fire here like Get My Niggas Out, Whatever I Say, All I Know, Chirpin', and Birds on Me. A standout track is the Young Jeezy and Fabulous assisted Look Like, where all three of them glide over a smooth, syncopated beat with fly bars about being dope boy fresh. And you can't mention this album without talking about the song that contains Plies' contribution to the slang dictionary, Becky. Say what you want about the subject matter of this track, but you have to admit the raunchy lyrics and the bassy beat make this song captivating in the same vein as Kaya's My Neck, My Back. While there is a lot to like about the album, if you're in the mood for pure southern trap, there are a few skippable songs. The Trey Songz collab Kitty Kitty is mediocre material, and Goonette, along with Good Dick, sounds like Plies doing a parody of himself. All in all, if you trim the fat on this album, you still have a solid project. Number 2, The Real Testament. They say it takes an entire lifetime for an artist to make their first album. The accumulation of their life experiences up to that point converges on the record as their introduction to the world. On the intro track of the 2007 debut, The Real Testament, Plies proclaims, if you like to hear lies, this the wrong CD to listen to. Now, whether Plies lived every actual experience talked about on this album is irrelevant when you can clearly hear that the subject matter on the records is familiar to him. On 100 Years, a story about sentencing disparity for young black men in the criminal justice system, Plies makes you feel like you're in the courtroom as a 17-year-old gets a life sentence. The gut-wrenching guilt of a prodigal son is heard over pianos on Running My Mama Crazy. The bitter feeling of betrayal from a close friend is felt clearly on Kept It Too Real, and you can tell by the audacious boasting over the booming beat on Money Straight that he's no stranger to big money ballin'. Now, whether he did it or just saw it all from his project windows, it comes across as authentic. Yes, this is Plies' most commercially successful album. It's certified platinum and spawned 2 of his highest charting singles, Shawty and Hypnotized. But album cuts on here like I Know You Workin', Friday, and Merkin Season are why Plies had the streets rocking with him so heavily. On top of that, upon retrospection, Plies' style was avant-garde. Play Goon Lurkin' and tell me you don't hear the DNA of future Florida rappers like Kodak Black or Young and Ace. While this album is dope in its own right, and you wouldn't go wrong if you had it number 1, it's only slightly edged out by our number 1 pick on this list. Number 1, The Definition of Real. 10 months after debuting in the mainstream, Plies returned with his second LP, The Definition of Real, in June of 2008. Most rappers fear the sophomore slump, the likely possibility that their second album might not do well critically, commercially, or both, but not Plies. On this record, he does what he does best at a very high level: create catchy club records, nasty songs to get freaky to, gangster music, and introspective records from a thug's point of view over beats that'll rattle the trunk of any donk in Florida. The album peaked at number 2 on the US Billboard 200, just like his first, went on to sell over 500,000 copies, and was well received by heads who understand his music, and a worthy follow-up to a strong debut. There are a lot of dope tracks on here. I'm the Man has a sly Trey Songz hook over a stomping drummer boy beat, and Plies spitting that thug motivation. Old Lady is a hilarious threat with a groovy beat for any ops to be wary about their significant other getting piped as a form of revenge. For the clubs, Plies has some heat here for the players and ballers with That Bitch and Watch This. As for the goons outside of VIP, he got you with the aggressive banger thug section. It's the street single though, Who Hotter Than Me, that really stands out when it comes to the up-tempo parts of this album. Over a monstrously synth-heavy beat and a booming raspy voice, Plies declaring the streets as his with convincing conviction. But the parts of this album that will have you playing this album again are the reflective and emotional joints. Worth Going Fed Fo analyzes the other side of the dope game with the same level of critique as Jay-Z did on a week ago. Rich Folk speaks on the pain of poverty poignantly, and One Day is a beautiful song about the repercussions of death on family and friends. However, the most powerful song on the album is the sentimental Somebody Loves You, a soulful song giving hope to those who feel hopeless. With the Patti LaBelle sampled beats sounding like peak Kanye, and Plies pushing his pen to its pinnacle like Pop, this track is a 10 out of 10, putting this album above his debut. If you're watching this, then we're assuming you're a fan of Florida artists. You might as well check out our list of Rick Ross albums ranked here, and yes, that Trick Daddy list is on the way. It's your man CJ Williams from Culturalist Theory. Until the next time.